Okay, carrying on with operations in Unit 7, we're now to add, subtract, sums, and differences. And for now, I am going to skip the listing excluded values just so you can focus on the basic skills that are just needed to do this. Okay, when you're adding fractions, adding or subtracting fractions, you already know that you need a common denominator first, and look for the least common denominator. The initials LCD stand for least common denominator. Starting basic, 1/2 plus 2/3, their least common denominator would be 6. So I need to multiply both fractions by the missing factor, top and bottom. So that leaves me with 3 plus 2 over 6. So this is just 5 over 6. Basic skill review. Moving to the next, 4 over 5 minus 7 over 9. Common denominator is 45. So the first fraction needs to pick up a factor of 9. Second fraction needs to pick up a factor of 5. Leaving me with 36 minus 35 over 45. That's 1 over 45. Notice that simple skill. Once you get the common denominator, all of your work focuses in the numerator. So remember that as these things start to layer up a little bit. Okay, here we go. Common denominator. Least common denominator would be 3x. 3x squared would be a common denominator, but it's not necessary to introduce an additional power of x. I've got x to the first. That's what's required in each individual ratio. So 3x to the first would be the common denominator. The first ratio needs to pick up a factor of 3, and the second ratio already has the common denominator. So this is simply 6 plus 1 over the common denominator, 3x, 7 over 3x. Moving to the next example, writing this as one expression. I'll make this x red. The red x needs a denominator of x. So that means I need to multiply this by x over x. So this now becomes x squared plus 1 over x. That's my simplified expression right there. Okay, moving on here. I already have a common denominator. The fractions are connected by subtraction. When you already have a common denominator, turn your focus to the numerators only. Apply the operation between the two ratios. This just turns into 6 over x minus 7. Just that simple and clean. Looking at the next example. Let's see, the 5 needs to be written with a denominator of x plus 1. So I will introduce that factor to the numerator in parentheses because I need to distribute the 5. So I now have 5x plus 5 plus the 2 that was from the denominator of the second ratio. Common denominator is x plus 1. Combining like terms, 5x plus 7 over x plus 1. That's my simplified expression. That's my sum right there. Okay, moving on. Common denominator, least common denominator is 15. The first fraction needs to pick up a factor of 3. Put his numerator, the binomial two-term numerator, in parentheses. When you introduce the factor of 3, make sure you distribute that 3. This is 3x plus 9 plus x minus 7. Denominator is 15. Combining like terms, 4x plus 2 over 15. That's your simplified expression. Okay, moving on to the next. Okay, so now I've got 8 is 4 and 2. Here I've got a 4. So I don't need to introduce another 4. So 8 would be the coefficient. This ratio or this term has the highest power on x is 2. The highest power on x here is 1. So I'm going to let 8x to the power of 2 be my common denominator. 8x squared is the common denominator. I have binomials in both fractions in the numerator, so I'm going to go ahead and put those in grouping symbols so that I distribute whatever additional term I'm bringing into the problem, to the expression. Let's see, the first ratio needs to pick up a factor of 4, and the second ratio needs to pick up a factor of x. So I'm going to be distributing those additional factors to the numerator. So the first numerator is 4x plus 10. The two fractions are connected by addition, so I don't have to worry about a negative sign. And then I have 2x squared minus 5x. And then my common denominator is 8x squared. Combining like terms and arranging this in standard form, I'll bring 2x squared to the front and I've got minus x adding together the 4x and the negative 5x, leaving me with just negative x, and then plus 10, and then my denominator is 8x squared. Since the members of the numerator are all connected by addition, there's nothing to simplify out. The only thing I would do is check to see if there's a way I could possibly factor that. Factors of positive 20 that would add to negative 1. Nothing is going to fit that, so I can't factor that, so I would stop right here. This is your simplified expression right here. Stop at this point. Just stop right there. That's your expression. Okay, moving on. Let's see what else. Okay, go to the next page. So now things are starting to look a little bit more complicated, but it's actually a pretty simple problem because I gave you the denominators in factored form, and they're the same factors. So they already have a common denominator. What I wanted to point out in this problem, though, I'm subtracting the second ratio from the first. So I've got this negative sign right here. When you have this set up, this is really 7 minus 3x plus 2. But this numerator, the second numerator, I would think of that as being in grouping symbols. I would need to subtract both members of that numerator. And I'm just going to write the words LCD and focus on this skill for just a minute. This is really 7 minus 3x minus 2 over the common denominator, then combining like terms, and then write your denominator. And there you have it. That's all. The main thing, I just threw that problem at you because I wanted to make sure that you knew how to handle this situation. That's a common mistake whenever you're subtracting the second ratio from the first, and you've got this binomial two-term expression, and that's the second numerator. Okay, looking at the next problem. All right, starting to get a little bit more complicated, a little bit more clutter. Looking at this first numerator, or denominator rather, this is your pattern. Trying to keep this simple so that you can get the idea of the process. This is 2x plus 5 times 2x minus 5. This is going to be my LCD. I already have the factor of 2x plus 5 in the second ratio, so the only missing factor would be 2x minus 5. And I just want you to see how as these get a little bit more complicated, your ability to factor quickly becomes really important. Okay, so the first ratio already has the common denominator. The second ratio needs to pick up the missing factor, and the missing factor would be 2x minus 5. This is the factor that's missing. And once again here, subtraction. So I'll give you two ways of looking at this. Here's one way. I could write this as x plus 4, give yourself a subtraction, put this in its own grouping symbol and distribute. That's 12x minus 30. I'm distributing the 6 that's sitting here to both members of the new factor that I'm introducing. And then here's my denominator. Some students choose to process it this way. And I'll write this again with less, and then you can decide which method you like best as we go through the skill. So here I'm introducing 2x minus 5. When the two ratios are connected by subtraction, some students move that negative sign up here to the 6 and make this a plus negative. So if that helps you, then you're distributing a negative 6. If you like that method better, then that's what you should do. So then I have negative, well, let me write the first ratio first. Then I have, here's my first denominator, x plus 4. And then when I move to this, I'm distributing a negative 6, which gives me negative 12x plus 30. And then, of course, I copy my common denominator. Either method works as long as all of your signs are right. And you can see that in this expression over here, I would end up in exactly the same place, just getting there a little bit different. Okay, to clean this up, just combining like terms, I have negative 11x plus 34 over 4x squared minus 25. And I think I got a different answer when I did that, but I think that's it. So I think that's the answer that I'm getting. Negative 11x plus 34, and then over your common denominator. The last example, the most complicated example, I'm looking at it, it looks like you've got a common denominator, but actually you don't. You've got x minus 1 And then over here, x minus 5. So they're close, but not exactly the same. So here, your LCD, to write all this out, your LCD would be 3x plus 2, x minus 1, x plus 5. Like, this is a good problem for learning and understanding why it's really important to choose the least common denominator and not just a denominator. Let's move that out of the way. Move this up here. Okay, there's my least common denominator. Okay, the first ratio needs to pick up that factor of x plus 5. And I'm going to fill that in the numerator. And the second ratio needs to pick up x plus 1, or x minus 1 rather, x minus 1. And let me highlight these. So here we go. This is green. So x minus 1. Let's see, x minus 1. He's picking up the additional factor of x minus 1. And then x plus 5. I'm picking up the additional factor of x plus 5 right here. So it's really important to identify the common denominator, and then your focus really turns to the numerators. Once you've introduced the missing factors, just be careful with the numerators. Here I'm going to be distributing. So I have 17x, and 17 times 5 is 85. That's my first ratio. I'll just keep these separate for a minute. And here I'm doing my double distributing. X squared minus x, I'll show every single step, plus 3x minus 3. And I'm just going to write the words LCD, if you don't mind, for just a minute, just for the sake of bulk and time on the video. So I now have 17x plus 85. Nothing happened over here. And when I move to this, this is x squared plus 2x minus 3, just combining like terms. I'm now going to bring everybody together over the same fraction bar, and I'm going to move the x squared term to the front. This is going to be x squared plus 19x's plus 82 over, and I'll copy all of my pieces. And let's see, 82. Let's just see if there's a chance I could factor this. And now I'm going to turn my focus to this. Just see if there's any chance of factoring that. And let's see, 82. 82 is 41 times 2. I think 41 is a prime number. Since the 19 is positive and 82 is positive, that means I will be looking for factors of 82 that add to 19. I don't think that's a possibility. So I think I would stop right here. And that would be my simplified answer. I'm going to stop the video here and ask you all to practice this skill. And just remember, common denominator, least common denominator. So I've kind of gone back and retold the whole story with adding fractions, adding, subtracting fractions. And you can see the progression of difficulty and how your math skills, you accumulate new skills as you go through your math courses.